So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the women-sponsored ERG discussion with the first all-female firefighting crew. Welcome. My name is Tony Frazier, and I'm the chair of the Women Employee Resource Group. We are a group who envision a working environment in which all females are supported in their access and resources they need to accelerate their careers. And these women who've been blazing the trail since 1992 for women in their careers as firefighters. Women hope this organization will be a place where women are equally treated, represented, and thriving across all departments. I'd like to introduce you to, we'd also like to thank those that we partnered with, the Minneapolis Women's Firefighters Association, the Minneapolis Fire Department, Councilmember Chavez's office, and Councilmember Johnson's office. Thank you for allowing us to partner in this celebration. I'd like to introduce you to Sherry Wiseman, the president of the Women's Firefighter Association.
Thank you. I'd like to take this time to introduce Deputy Chief Melanie Rucker.
So I got promoted, so I am I am Assistant Chief Melanie Rucker. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. And I just wanted to thank you all for being here, and then also give special recognition on behalf of Chief Tyner, who will not be able to make it today, but he will definitely be there tomorrow, as well as to give honors and also, let's say, accolades and also respect to these four women, trailblazing women. It's hard to believe that as early as back in 1970, this Minneapolis Fire Department was an all-white male department. And then after, it had to take a lawsuit to get started with diversity with African Americans that expanded to as well as women and other minorities on the department. Regardless of the lawsuit, it does, and just because there's an opening for a position, just because there's an opening anywhere, it does take the courage to be those groundbreakers. And these women here, two of them, one of them's not here right now, were the first class of women to actually come on the department and pave that way and take all the struggles. It wasn't pretty coming on. They had to really fight for their rights to be here on the department and also prove that women can definitely do this job. And I commend them and I applaud them. And then the second class as well. So they paved the way for me to be here, for me to be in this position, also to promote through the ranks. Several of these women here, one that's absent, promoted all the way to the chief. And then you have Chief Jean Kidd. She was captain at the time of the all-women crew, but she promoted to chief officer. You have your FMOs, you have your fire investigators and your captains as well. So you see it, you can be it. That's my motto. And then also my motto is you don't pull up the ladder after you get to where you are. You continue to pave that way for others to follow behind you. And also another thing with these women, and one of them that's absent, they created the Women's Association. They came in and they supported and trained women to actually show them that you can do this job. They opened up the window before even testing. They had the testing changed. I did a lot of background. They had the physical test changed to make sure that there's things in there that were not necessary, and they had those eliminated to make sure that we were trained, we were ready, and we were capable of coming on this job without any obstacles. So I want to thank them on behalf of the Minneapolis Fire Department. I want to thank them on behalf of all the women and the minorities on this department for just the open diversity of all to be included, inclusivity, and that you see it, you can be it, And I thank you for your courage, for paving the way for all of us to be here. So I appreciate you. And then I'm going to open up the door and introduce Dr. Cedric Alexander, our new Commissioner of Community Safety.
Good morning, and thank you, Assistant Chief Rucker. And thank you all for being here in response and in respect to this wonderful crew of, I don't call them ex-firefighters, they're former firefighters and probably still firefighters in spirit, I would imagine. But anyway, your history, the work that you've done, everything you bring up to this day, as you can see, is certainly appreciated by everyone here. And I'm glad we have an opportunity today to recognize you, today and tomorrow. But in addition to all that, I think the important piece of what we're seeing, experiencing here at this very moment is a course, another course in history and time in which we can always do better. And just because we have had this achievement to take place, all-female crew here in Minneapolis Fire Department, we can have many other achievements that we're yet to even think about or even to discover. But you certainly have, and I mean very sincerely, you certainly have paved the way for this community and for this country in terms of the work that you've done and the work that you still continue to do, and the fact that you're still with us here in this community speaks volumes to your ongoing commitment. And I just want to say that to you personally and professionally. Well, let me say to all of us, for me as Commissioner of Public Safety, here's what's incredibly important to me going forward, is that we continue in our efforts to make sure that this city, in this state, in this country, provides us with opportunities where we can create new histories and give others opportunities, such as these women were given opportunity and had to struggle to get to where they were and where they are today. But the roads that are traveled, the people who come behind you, should not have to deal with everything you had to deal with in order to be where you are and where you became when you became chief, and the different roles that you play. I know it was hard and arduous. I know it was difficult. There probably was a great deal of bias and anti-feminism involved. Anti-feminism, did I say that right? Involved. But that was then, and this is now. And you have men and women from all groups, from all cultures, from all backgrounds, who today all of us support doing what is right in this 21st century and in this year of 2022 going forward. So we all have had our challenges, who have come from a variety of different walks in life. But the goal is, for me, is to make sure that we continue to be sensitive and aware that everybody and everyone is given an opportunity to achieve and to excel and not have to deal with any excruciating pain to be in those roles, but to be treated equally and equitably throughout the entire process. And we all have that responsibility to do so. Because this should not be a novelty, having women in our fire service, in our public safety service, having men, having white, having black, having gay, having Jews, having Muslims, regardless of what the demographic may happen to be. We should be a community that should be proud of everyone that comes to this city and have an opportunity to excel, and we should be there to support them, that they meet the rigors of the job, but more importantly, the social supports that we provide to them are hugely important to their success. Because the success of the women that you see here and the one that may be absent, they themselves are heroes, if you will, certainly to me, but more importantly, I think what you demonstrate and what you continue to demonstrate is the hope for the little girls and the little boys that are out there who look up to you and see that they have an opportunity like you had but without all the added drama, right? And that's hugely important. So I applaud you, and I mean that sincerely, not just as some speech, but I sincerely applaud what you have done and what you continue to do in this community. And we're going to make sure, I'm going to make sure, and the mayor's going to make sure that opportunities still exist for everyone that's in this room and outside of this room who wish to come into this city under any parts of public safety, if you will have the opportunity to excel and achieve. And they will have you to look up to and to feel good about and to be a role model to us all, because we all need role models. And I think some of the best role models, some of the most influential role models, some of the most powerful role models that I have ever experienced have been women. Look at the history and you'll see it for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dr. Alexander. Thanks, Chief Rucker. Appreciate you. Listen, first thing, I'm Christy Nixon. I'm just a behind-the-scenes person, but I'll be the one moderating the discussion today. Appreciate that some people have to leave before our time is up, because I do expect us to go a little bit longer than an hour. So, welcome to stay as long as you can, and then exit stage right when it's time. I do want to call out some names of people who've been involved in this effort for recognizing these women and also pushing forward more women on Minneapolis Fire Department. We've been doing this a couple years, and it came about because the celebration of Station 24, the All-Black Fire Brigade, in 115 years ago, made the news, and that was in my ward, in Councilmember Johnson's ward. So I said, hey, how about we recognize these women before 115 years pass? And Bonnie Blaskowski was still in the department. She's retired. She was not able to be here today due to family activities. But these other three women, which I'll call out and talk a little bit about, are still around, or they traveled in for this. So I appreciate that we're able to celebrate this 30-year anniversary of the first all-woman crew when they are all still here to celebrate and to share and to contribute to the city and the fire department. So I want to tell you about some people who helped a lot from the start. So Karen Moe, Nancy Steele, Suzanne Murphy, they all no longer work for the city, but they were part of the early crew. And then politics happens and people turn over, city council members turn over, and so they pass the baton. So Kate Nelson, Kate, you want to stand up, please? Yeah, if I call your name, you guys stand up. Don't make me ask. Okay, Kate Nelson was the linchpin for all our meetings. Tony Fraser of the Minneapolis Women Employee Resource Group. Listen, Tony gets things done. She gets things done. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, Karen. Appreciate it. Thanks for starting us off. And Raven Neville's also from Women. Sherry Weissman. She's now the president of the Minneapolis Women's Firefighter Association. Been involved from the very start. I want to thank Councilmember Chavez for being the proponent of the resolution that he read this morning. He'll read again tomorrow, and it's part of the permanent city record. I want to thank City of Minneapolis Communications very much for not only this setting up today, Mike, but for streaming this and also for posting it online. That's the most important part. And also I want to thank MFD. They've been involved from the start as well. So thanks very much. Aureen Chaudray from Councilmember Chavez's office was very important in the resolution and also any dealings with the city council. So thanks very much to her. So I want to give my introduction of the four that I have before here, and then they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. I want you guys to know that it's free form. I've talked to some of them beforehand, And so it got them primed for some of the answers they're going to give, and I hope they're going to play off each other and make them even better answers. I told them not to pull any punches, okay? It's not the time for that. They got to be nice during their tenures, and what are you going to do, make them retire? You're not. So, you got Captain Jean Kidd, who was in the first class of women in February 1986. And we got fire motor operator Mary Moan, who's in the second class, also in 1986. Firefighter Vicki Hoff, August 1989. And firefighter Bonnie Bierman-Blaskowczyk, who also was in the same class as Vicki. And 30 years ago, they met up the first all-woman crew in Minneapolis Fire Department history, probably in the country and maybe in the world. All right, I talked to some old people, and they said, "Yeah, that's for real." And so the research happened back then. The internet wasn't existing back then, so it's a little different. But probably the first all-woman crew, formal woman crew, not just a day thing, but they were together quite a while in the world. So I'm going to ask them to tell stories, because you guys are going to remember the stories better than you remember just yes or no answers. So they're going to go narrative all the way on this stuff. So go with them on these narratives. And we have the room for longer than an hour, not much longer than an hour, but we'll see how long it takes. And I encourage you guys to go. So I'm going to read some questions, and then either one or all three are going to ping on them. And we'll start with this easy question. How many years and when did you serve on MFD? And tell me about any career highlights you had on the way. Jean?
They always tell me what to do. My name is Jean Kidd, and I came on in the first group of women on the job in 1986. We started the testing process several years prior to that date. And a lawsuit at that time was brought against the department, which delayed us from the time that we tested to the time that we actually got on the job. It was about 2 years of a waiting list. I was on the job until 2015, I believe, and during the course of that time, the only time that I had an all-woman crew was with these women on this panel here. It was an interesting experience at the time. It was hard. I can't say that it was an easy job, but when we got there, you think, wow, it's a sense of relief that, wow, we're all together, but it wasn't. It was almost a sense, for me, the dread of more focus that was going to be put upon us, and it was. And it was very challenging, and it wasn't an environment. I was telling Vicki on the way over, it was so difficult at times that I remember going over at the hospital there at Abbott Northwestern, there's I'm going to say it, the Breast Institute, and I went in there, and the women were so nice, and they gave you coffee and said, we're here for you, and we're this, and I just remember sitting there going, wow, I've never been in such a pro-woman environment in my life, and it was so shocking to me to have that. I realized what the experience had been since I came on, and I wasn't prepared for that. I just took the job. I just came. I didn't know it was going to be something different at the time, and as so many women do in life, we put one foot in front of the other and just keep moving, and that's where we ended up. And to see these women celebrated, I can't thank you enough for that, because they deserve all of it.
So my name is Vicki Hoff, and I was hired in 1989. I thought I was the second class, but I guess I'm the third class. And I'm just going to do. Right now. It's three. Oh, so I'm fourth? Oh, gosh. Anyways, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about how my career went. There'll be other stories later. So 10 10 years as a firefighter, and I promoted to captain in the arson unit. So I was the first woman to be promoted into the arson fire investigation unit. Total of almost 21 years on the fire department when I retired. Let's see, what else? I was the first person to become certified fire investigator, CFI, in the city, in the Minneapolis Fire Department history. I think I still might be, I don't know. So that was above and beyond something that I did in my own training and things, a nationally recognized program that I was part of or tested for. Yeah, so that was just going to give you a little timeline of my career, so that's all I'm going to say about that.
My name is Mary Moen. I got hired in September of 1986. It was a second class that included women. So I came along after Jean and the other gals from her class were beating the brush. And I had it pretty good. My experience was pretty good until our crew got together. And then I realized, oh, this is some of the pressure that certainly the first gals had felt, and some of the stories I had heard. But still, it was coming together with this crew was the highlight of my career. I came out in '86. I was the second woman promoted to fire motor operator. Jean was the first. And I loved that job, stayed with that one the rest of my career. I did 30 years, almost to the day, and quit, retired. That was enough. I can't think of a better career to have had. There's people here, I've probably worked with most everybody from the fire department who's here today for sure. And I served them bottles from the salvage rig for a number of years. I did the salvage rig, which is the rig that responds to all the fires in the city and gives the firefighters fresh air and Gatorade and water and kind of the snack truck. but it was a good career. There were some difficulties. Like Jean said, there was a lot of pressure when that crew came together. I think in 1992 it got to the point where it was just like people were like, okay, we got women on the job. They're not too bad, until a crew got put together, and all of a sudden it seemed to be like, oh, wait, you're going to let 4 of them work together and there aren't going to be any guys on them? They almost didn't being the administration, almost didn't let it happen, which would have been out of the norm for the way we moved about and transferred into positions and stuff. There was talk that they weren't going to allow it to happen because it hadn't happened before. And anyway, it was interesting. It happened, and I'm grateful it did. And I want to thank every firefighter I see in this room, because everybody here was a pleasure to work with, and what a great career.
And Bonnie joined in '89 and just retired this year, and she served at every rank of the department, including chief. Okay, was firefighter one of the things you wanted to be when you grew up?
I'll start with that one. No, never thought about it, never saw it. I saw firefighters. I grew up in South Minneapolis and never saw a woman firefighter. Saw a lot of firefighters. They used to come to the school when we had fire drills, and the fire trucks would be outside, and it was like, oh, cool, that's kind of cool. But never dreamed of being one. So, no, it wasn't something I thought about.
Yeah, that's kind of true for me. I was telling the story. I went to college for 5 years, maybe even 6, no degree. So I just couldn't figure out what to do. The only thing I knew is I couldn't do a 9-to-5 job. And I would think about joining the circus. I mean, it was just, just didn't know. So I was actually standing on the corner of Lake and Hennepin, and a fire truck went by, and I looked in the back seat or looked up, and it was a woman firefighter. It was Lauren Plant. And I went to my friend, look, they got a woman firefighter. Probably said woman fireman or something. And then she actually knew her. So she got me in touch with her. I remember calling her at the fire station, and then whenever she was working, I went down. So she helped me through the hiring process, the training for the physical test and things like that. So it was nothing I really had thought about, again, because I never saw it. You never saw a woman firefighter. You never saw a commercial or on TV or anything like that. It was just, so never seeing it. I think if I would have saw it as a young person, a young girl, I think I probably would have thought, I'd like to do that. Because like Mary said, it was a wonderful career. It suited me perfect. So I was lucky. Lake and Hennepin, at the right moment.
And for me, I never thought about it. I worked with horses for a long time. I liked heavy work, liked ranch work. I liked a non-traditional job, always appealed to me, whether I worked, as a server, bar industry, did all that kind of odd hours, that type of thing appealed to me. And I saw a poster one day and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of fun, sounds physical, sounds like what my body could do. And so then I started training. I went over to, at that time, you could get into the government center stairwell. I had my little 50-pound plate in the backpack, go up and down those stairs and do all that type of thing. And then made it through the testing, but then once we made it through, like I said, then we were delayed several years before we actually got into being in the first class. So, and Lauren was in my class.
Yeah, first class.
And I have stories about her little feet.
Yeah, we'll get to those in a bit. The first time these women imagined being a firefighter was when they went through the application process. And I heard a common denominator is that if Chief Rucker, you see it to be it, absolutely right. So we saw it, and only then do you realize that you can actually do it. So it happened at the same time for these young women. They are young. You're young. You're not young. So the time, I would like you to tell us about the time when you thought you realistically had a chance to become a Minneapolis firefighter. If it's different, it is different from the time you thought, hey, I can try that. But when did you realistically have a chance to be a firefighter?
Is this like Jeopardy? Yeah. Okay.
50-pound plate is not a little plate. She said little, not little.
I don't know about being a firefighter. I think for the process that we went through, and you had to go through the interview, which was in itself a challenge because it was all old chiefs that sat at this table in the training center at 21s in the basement. And they sat there, and Chief Dickinson, who was chief of the department at the time, sat at the end in his suit with his glasses over his head, and you had to go through this interview process, which was intimidating. I mean, they're just, and they are not humored by you. So, and you come in and you go, hi, because you don't know. You don't know it's paramilitary. You don't even know what that means. And so you sit down there, and I just remember him saying, and what are you going to do about your hair?
Yeah, that was like the first question.
Right, like it was right out of the gate. And I said, I don't know, what am I going to do about my hair? Well, if the men can't have long hair, neither can you. Well, I said, well, I guess then I'm going to cut it, huh? Okay. And I mean, that was kind of like it. It was this trial that you had to go through. And interesting enough, as we all had to cut our hair, and I can give you stories of hair, it was a Native American man that was on our job before me that actually fought that requirement for hair and had that changed. It was not a woman on this job. It was a Native American man that fought for that, for all of us to be able to wear hair. And too bad Shan isn't here because she wore the ugliest wig you've ever seen in your life. But she wanted her long hair, so she wore this horrific wig so she could have long hair. But I mean, those are the kind of the weird things you don't think about. But to firefight in a wig on top of your own head of hair. I can't even imagine. And it was horrific. It was like a Lucille Ball thing that fell onto the road. She didn't care. She just popped it on and be like, okay, that's a good look. Anyway, that's my story. I don't know. I took us down a road.
Oh, that's good. So it's a great combination of when you realistically thought you're going to be a firefighter, and also a description of the interview process, because I've heard from each of you how that went sideways. The interview process. The interview process.
Did it go sideways for you? Maybe it was training.
Okay. All right, we'll get there. We'll get there. So Bonnie shared with me they had a stress test at that time, and we played rugby together, Bonnie and I. She was very fit, and so she aced it. I mean, she was on it until they turned it off, and they told her she failed. Failed? How can you fail? And many of the other people who aced it also failed. So somebody else tracked down what protocol they used, and it turned out to be a heart patient protocol. So the people who had passed it, and my apologies to anyone in the room who happened to pass that test, the people who passed it were all smokers. So they had done this protocol that was not an athlete protocol, which is what you need to be a firefighter, but it was a different protocol. So they got it relooked, and many physically fit people were then hired. So there were a lot of things that changed in the interview process and in the testing process. That was pretty much a constant. Go ahead. Yeah.
I forgot about that part. Yeah, it was really strange because Bonnie and I had to keep doing the stress test. And the stress test, they hook you up to oxygen, all these electrodes or whatever they're called, and do a Stairmaster. And they would just keep increasing it. And you did it till you raised your hand and you couldn't go anymore. I mean, it was to exhaustion. But both Bonnie and I did it the longest of all the people that were hired or went through the interview process. And then they said, you didn't pass. And we're like, how can we not pass? We outlasted as far as the time. And it had something to do with like our oxygen intake. We weren't taking in as much oxygen as they wanted us to take in, but it's like, what?
That's the point, right?
It didn't, it was like, again, what were the standards being based on? And I didn't know that part, but we had to do it like 3 times, and it was stressful. I mean, to make your body go to where you want to keep going because you want to get the job, but it's like, to do it till you collapse, it's hard. It's very, very stressful. So it was like, I remember the last time doing it, and the song, every time I hear the music of Steve Winwood, because they were playing that, they say, I don't remember what it was, but so every time I hear that, it's, I start, do a little twitch, it's like going to Station 21 in the basement where they had training. You don't want to go down there, because it just brings back something, but every time I hear Steve Winwood, I'm like, oof. It's good. And
That's called PTSD.
dealing with it.
So I know that your friends and your family are really proud of you now after you've had an entire career in the fire service. But can you tell us how they reacted when you said, I'm going to apply, when you got on, and then throughout your career?
Nothing really dramatic. I mean, my parents were very supportive. I don't recall anything from friends that were like, what? So for me, there was nothing surprising. No one ever said, I can't do that, or I shouldn't do that, or anything. So I think I had a lot of support.
I'm on the job because a friend had told me in 1984, she has since retired from the Minneapolis Police Department, but she said, Mary, the fire department's looking to hire women. We should test for it. I was like, well, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. So we did it, and I got my name drawn out of the barrel at the time, and she didn't, and ended up on the fire department. She ended up on the police department. But my father, also a lifelong Minneapolis resident, tried for the fire department just after World War II and was on the list. And at the time, if you were on the list, you could work in the fire stations for other firefighters, kind of relieve them or, give them a day off. And he actually worked a couple of shifts at Station 4 back in the 50s. But then he aged out. He got too old, was taken off the list because he hit age 35. He was so proud. It makes me tear up thinking about him now. My mom was worried, but he was so proud that I got on the fire department. And he's passed away now, but that sticks with me.
And for me, it was a friend that I worked for said, you should try this. This would be a good job for you. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. So, and that was just kind of it. I didn't have any preconceived idea about anything about the job. I just thought, oh, yeah, those hours sound great. I like that, 24 hours. Yeah, I could do that. So my mother, on the other hand, she was, I think the dutiful, I'm worried. And Dad was like, I think Dad raised a daughter he never thought he was going to control anyway, so he never went down that road. So he was just like, yeah, you should just, good hard job, it's a good job, it's a job of respect, that's a good job, you should have that. So that was my dad.
And Bonnie passed me that she saw a poster at the gym and she was working out with friends, and she thought, well, that's physically demanding job, it's not going to be boring, going for it. So that's a pretty common theme. Speaking of physically demanding, firefighting is a physically demanding job. How did you train before, and how did you keep in shape during your time as a firefighter or other ranks?
Vic said steroids. I think for me, it was just, you started to do more weightlifting, incorporating all that kind of training. As the entrance exam changed for the fire department, it required you to kind of refocus your training all the time. But I think for me, it was certainly incorporating a lot more weightlifting. I liked lifting weights, and it was something women didn't really do back then. I remember Joe Weider was the man, and Rachel McLish was the poster child for women bodybuilders. Nobody had ever really seen it before. It was something new back then even. And I know you guys are like, well, this is something we've done, Jane Fonda and leg warmers, but back then there weren't a lot of women bodybuilders. And so it was something that you knew that you took in, and you had to do it just for the job. And swinging axe, I can tell you one story quick. I had an axe, and I was going to train a rookie class, and I thought, I better go out and practice my axe skills again. So I had my axe, and I had my Doberman, and I'm walking down the road, and there was a whole pile of railroad ties down by the railroad tracks, and I thought, I'll go chop through a couple of railroad ties. That'll get me back in shape to work with the rookies. And so I'm down there, and I'm whacking away, and all of a sudden, there must have been 8 squads that came flying and surrounded me. And I'm standing there like, well, okay. And they get out of their cars, and they got their guns, and I said, did you think I was going to kill my dog? And they go, yes. And it's like, oh my God. And I started laughing, and I said, no, I do that. But those are kind of the perils of working out for the fire department with an axe in a neighborhood in the daytime. And a dog. So.
For me, at the time, before I got hired, so I was 89, I was already working out quite a bit. I was kind of into the weightlifting and, I don't want to say bodybuilding, but, so I was already really physically fit at the time. But when, after I talked with Lauren Plant and learned about the actual testing, I had a 50 or 40-pound copper coil that I ran up and down Minnehaha Falls all the time in training for. And I also had heard that you had to do pull-ups. So I was able to do 20 pull-ups at the time I was hired. And so I was really excited. I'm going to do these pull-ups in training, because I thought it was, they said you have to do them in training. We never did pull-ups. So I kept saying, when are we going to do the pull-ups? When do we do pull-ups? Never. And I think one day we were out doing PT, and there was a bar, like at a gym, and I I did knock out some pull-ups, you know, but, yeah, so never got to do the pull-ups. And then throughout my career too, you know, I stayed in shape, I always worked out. When I got promoted into arson, I did get kind of slacky, but then I picked it up and I still work out. I still try to keep fit.
I did, after we took the test to get on the job, I realized, okay, I have to lift more weight. So I started more weightlifting at that point. And before that, I was a sporty gal, shall we say. I just, you know, I did softball and some football and some other sports. But, and I was a volleyball player in high school and stuff like that. But I started lifting more weights when I realized I needed to, and continued that for a while. And then I got fat.
Yeah, girl.
So, did you realize, or did you feel that men and women trainees were treated differently at rookie school?
You mean when we got pulled into the room to be talked to about that time a month and we should be able to control our emotions and not make it uncomfortable for the men? That?
Yeah.
Or should I go somewhere else? It was, there was a lot of discussion about that. Our femaleness, that was it, and how we were going to make the men feel in the stations. There was a union president's wife at the time who wrote a letter that went out about the men sleeping in the stations with us and what kind of, we were going to put their husbands in danger at fires, and let alone we're sleeping with them in the stations because it was a dorm setting. We've changed kind of the design of our stations, but at the time it's a communal sleeping area. And that was a stumbling block, I think, for a lot of the men. For us, I think unless you were in the military, I don't know where you were in a one big room bunk situation. That was an unusual situation for most of us, but we really didn't think much of it because there was no reference point to it. So you didn't really think about it. But I wanted to talk about Lauren Plant, who came on with me. And Lauren was probably is maybe 5'4", 5'5", and she's had these little bitty feet. And the reason that I know she has little bitty feet is that when we came on, the equipment didn't fit us. And there was no equipment for us. And she was meant to go through training in a size 11 boot. Man's boot with a size 5 foot. And I don't know if you can understand kind of the danger that wasn't acknowledged, that was put upon the women with equipment that did not fit them, nor was anybody concerned that it didn't fit us. That was just something you better deal with. And to see now that there's equipment that's designed for women, and the gloves, her hands were like this, so she's wearing a men's small glove, but you're hanging onto so much fabric because the fingers are this much longer than your hand, and then still doing the work, climbing the ladders and doing that thing. So to acknowledge that, and she still did it. She was a beast, and did it in spite of all of that. And that's what I mean, it was so much better than so many people, and yet it was considered so much less. And that's something that I want to acknowledge all the women that were in those groups with that kind of situation placed upon them. They didn't utter a word, they just put their heads down and they did the work. And so that deserves acknowledgement on them.
On rookie school, in our class, one of the gals got called in to talk with Jan, who was the secretary in training, because the guys wouldn't talk to her about this, but they told her, you need to wear a bra because you're distracting the guys when you're doing PT. Now the gal, if you knew her, I won't say a name, but she didn't need to wear a bra. But she was distracting the guys, so she got actually pulled in to Jan's office, and poor Jan had to talk to her about wearing appropriate undergarments.
Yeah, that, I was in the class with Bonnie, so it was just Bonnie and I, and the thing that stands out for me is that we stood out. So we just stood out everything we did. It was always, the focus was on us, you know, what, not maybe directly, but there was always an eye on us, and it seemed like the captains, the training captains were always really trying to be careful on what they were saying, but then they would say, well, we can't say that because of you, things like that. So we just stood out. And to like going off-site to go to training, when we would burn houses and things like that, the guys could take care of the business anywhere, and we couldn't. I mean, I remember a couple of times, unfortunately, we had, pee behind a bush, it was terrible. And I think at one point we said, can we go use the restroom? And then we had to, it was a big deal. We had to use the chief's car. Me and Bonnie drove the car. I remember that was exciting because we were in the battalion chief car. And, we'd have to drive to a convenience store, go in, use the bathroom, and then come back. And it'd be like, okay, they're back, we can go, So there always was a focus. And I just remember standing out, like everything we did. Same thing, there was a changing room down there. And, it was kind of like, they wanted to include you to not be different, but we really didn't want to change our clothes in the same room as them. But we did, meaning into our PT clothes. We just were in the corner. I mean, they kind of left us alone, but it was still, they just didn't really know how to handle the newness of women. And we understood that. But the main thing for me is that we just stood out, everything we did. The only nice thing is that because there were two restrooms down there, men's and women's, Bonnie and I we didn't have to wait, because 20 guys, one bathroom, so that was kind of nice, but yeah.
Can I add one thing?
please.
There was one thing I remember too about training is we had to sign a form that we weren't pregnant, and if you were pregnant, you couldn't come on the job. So that was a form that we had to do, and in fact, I think the first pregnancy that ended up on the job was Bonnie, and she wrote the policy. So that the administration didn't even write a policy. She had to write her own. That's kind of how sad and how, what is that? What is that? The employee has to write the policy. So that's, and no one seemed to care. No one saw it as a big deal. No one saw that as an issue. That's what that I see here is that nobody helped. It was just up to the employees to find their way through the process. So that's incredible. That's incredible. And it should be acknowledged of what she did for all of us, what she did there.
On that, the pregnancy thing, Shelley Paulson was the first one to have a baby on the job. And there, like you said, there was no policy, but we had been told upon hiring that as soon as you knew you were pregnant, you were supposed to tell your captain, who would tell the chief, and run up the chain of command, and they'd pull you out of the stations. Well, Shelley didn't want to come out of the stations, so she hid it as long as she could until she was wearing Fred's pants because her pants wouldn't fit anymore. And I believe they pulled her out of the station at the time. And then Bonnie was the next one to be pregnant on the job, and Bonnie knew her stuff. And Bonnie knew that it was illegal for them to do that, and so formed the policy, and I think that's how it came about. Yep, so Bonnie was the one who helped design the policy and inform the department that you can't discriminate against a woman because she's pregnant. She gets to decide unless she can't perform her duties. So I think was the history on that.
So mentorship is important for the health and future of any organization. So if you guys can tell us some of the people that mentored you, and then how you in turn mentored others.
For me, I didn't really have a mentor. I mean, obviously Lauren Plant helped me go through the process of getting hired and things like that. But I think I'd have to say Jean was my mentor. Without her really knowing she was mentoring me. I mean, I always looked up to her. You know, she was the first woman promoted to driver FMO, right? And also first captain and battalion chief. So I always had a great respect for her, even before she was my captain. So, and as far as mentoring anyone else, I don't think I did.
Mine started right, the first station I went to worked with Leroy Swenson and Ed Otis and Pat Sexton, Ricky Campbell, and Jerry Kruger, and those guys couldn't have been better for me. I felt accepted right away, and that was incredible, because that's not the story of many of the women on the job. So, and Ed Otis in particular, and I know some firefighters here are going to scoff because Ed has his history, but Ed took me under her wing right away and treated me like one of the guys. So I'd start with, my mentors were many of the men that trained us, the captains that trained us, the ones that I had anyway.
Mentoring others.
Well, I tried to, especially the women that were wanting to be drivers, because I love driving. I tried to help them along the way and encourage them to try it, and just, if you see something you wanted to do, do it. So.
The one that stands out for me was John Faust. He was my second captain when I moved, my second move as a rookie, and he was this larger-than-life firefighter, you know, open coat, wild curly hair, and just, he and his brother was a chief on the job, and John was a captain, and just those Tarzan-like bodies, you know, that long, lean, flat body that can go all day, and John had a big booming voice, and I just remember going to fives and, Gene! It's just like, yeah. And you would follow along, and he didn't seem to bat an eye at me. And he would work out naked in the basement. And and I just remember, oh, John, he's a Fruit Loop, you know, he's down there. And I said, I don't care, you know, I'm just like, I'm not going down there, what, you know. And so then I stand at the top of the stairs and say, John, yeah, Gene, wait a minute, I'm coming down there. But I'll never forget, we had a fire. And he was always willing to share, and he was just a naturally gifted firefighter. There's some people that it just is their being. And when you see it, like in any other profession, when you see it and it's just who they are, and they move through that environment with such ease and such naturalness, and just that he's so brave, but it was never like, I'm brave. It just, this is what you do. This is what you do. And I remember we were in this fire, and we're, don't you see it, Gene? And I said, no, see what? I don't get it. I can't see anything. The smoke ain't moving. You see that? It means that it's not going anywhere. It's just smoldering somewhere. But if it's moving down the hall, you need to be really careful. And I can never forget that. And the second word of advice he gave me, and it always stuck with me as I became a supervisor, was always give them the benefit of the doubt. Always. And I think that was John, was that it was, you entered into this club of people that are willing to put their lives on the line for you, and are you going to do the same for you? And with that, there's a lot of respect that comes with that, and you have to be careful with it. It's a trust factor, and unless you've done something like that, or police, fire, or any other kind of situation where you feel really at risk yourself, and someone is willing to stay with you with it, do you get it? And he was always such an honorable person in that regard. So I think for me, that was, you entered into a realm that I had never been in like that before. So to have somebody like him to be the person to show me how to be that person was extraordinary. And as far as mentoring, I just would help anybody who asks. That's it. That's all I got.
Bonnie passed on that she had Chief Breffel for her first captain when she was at Station 1 when she first came on. And then later on, when she was captain, he was her battalion chief. And also Rocco Forte picking her out in the Cultural Awareness Committee or position that I can't really tell you much more than that about it. But anyway, that chief picked out this, probably a captain at the time, and showed her some things that other captains didn't get, so she appreciates the mentorship of those two gentlemen. For what she did to pass it on, the Minneapolis Women's Firefighter Association, which many people in this audience can talk more about, but I'll tell you that's how I came onto this job, is they told me about it and they helped me. So I'm glad to see that Sherry, the new president, is going to continue with that organization all over again, because it's really important to have a voice in the chief's ear. Okay, I spent a lot of years on Mighty Engine 5. And I didn't know about the first all-women crew until Kath Mullen, who I think I hear out here, do I? I don't know. Anyway, Kath Mullen told me about it a couple of years ago. So, were you guys, did you recognize that you were the first all-woman crew? And then tell me some stories.
Yeah, we did. We recognized it. I remember one of the first day, maybe the first day, we kind of walked in and we were looking around the station, and it's like all the guys from the previous crew had cleared out, and it was just us and salvage driver. But on our crew, it was just us, and we were kind of like, okay, now what? This is really cool. What was the question?
You told me when we had lunch about how the crew was formed, and you can go ahead and tell that story of the drive.
The crew got formed because Jean got made captain, and I don't know how the opening at Fives came up, but they didn't have redraw at the time. Jean ended up they put her at Station 5, and she's the first woman captain. Well, there's a lot of men still uncomfortable. But part of it was Engine 5 had been newly reconstituted like a couple years before. They took a bunch of older firefighters that the chief was allegedly unhappy with at Station 19 and closed down that ladder truck, put them at Engine 5, the new Engine 5, which was a very busy engine, and they kind of slowly worked themselves out of that position and didn't want to be there. So Jean ended up there, and a number of the guys that were there weren't probably too happy working for the first woman captain, so they kind of bailed out. And as they bailed out, the way that you backfilled a crew then was people would have request letters in to work at a station, and they would go to that file, Engine 5, who wants to work here, who's got the most seniority, and lo and behold, it ended up being Vicky and Bonnie, and the driver was still there. And so pretty soon the driver realized, I'm going to be working with 3 women. I could probably handle 1, but not 3. So he asked to get out, and the chief at the time let him go, and he let me come in, and that completed the 4. So it was because they didn't want to work with a woman captain. That's how the crew came apart. But then there was also discussion, because I remember talking to the union president at the time, that there was discussion about not allowing the crew to come together because whatever reason it hadn't happened before, and how can we let 4 women work together? It's, are they going to be okay? Who's going to watch them, kind of thing. And so that's how it came together. That's my recollection of how it came together.
Jean, how was your crew treated by other crews, by the battalion chief and by administration?
Well, there was a lot more overt fighting among shifts back then, and we became the chip in the war between battalion chiefs at the time, and so that became hard because you started to carry a lot of water for other people, that if you could say another guy wasn't being supportive of women, then that you could get them to go downtown. So if you wanted to get after somebody, you could just always throw us in the mix so that the other person could get in trouble or have to be investigated or to do something. So that happened quite a bit. And so that was exhausting because you had, there wasn't a lot of support on the fire ground. The support that I got were for a couple of guys over at Sevens that I remember would help us. We were often left after fire to pick up our own hose. They would clear everybody, and we'd be first in and last out. They wouldn't help us, and they would do some things that put us at risk to see if we could take it. And that happened over and over, and it got tiring. It just got tiring. But these women took it. They did it, and so there were a couple of guys that were willing to stand up and just say that isn't right and helped us anyway. And so Denny Huggett was one of them, I remember, and Maurice King. I can remember those two absolutely would always step up and help. And on the south side, that was about it. there wasn't a lot of help. So the crew took a beating physically from command and from the other crews, and they did it. That's all.
I used to complain to Gene because I was the driver, I'm outside, and okay, we're done here, and Vicki and Bonnie would come out, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And she's like, we're pulling ceiling. And I remember thinking, well, what's ladder 3 doing? And Gene would say, well, they ain't doing it, it's got to get done, we're going to get a job done. And so she's right, they took more of a physical beating because other crews weren't doing their job for whatever reason, but it wasn't fun. That part wasn't fun. Eventually, I think they came around, but initially anyway, there was a lot of testing going on. There was anything that went wrong in the fire ground, we got blamed for, even if I know for sure it wasn't us. There was a couple times where I was at a union meeting, Vicki was driving. We had a lot of fires the first couple of months we got together. And Bonnie and Gene had making an interior attack on a fully involved house, and all of a sudden there's water the second line didn't get water, and they're complaining Vicki doesn't know how to pump, and turns out that the Y got kicked closed or somebody closed it on purpose, we're not sure, but anything that went wrong we got blamed for at the fire. And we heard rumors about we had to put the fire out for the girls. We heard this from eights a lot. We had to put their fire out when they didn't. And we heard rumors the chief over there was saying, yeah, I worked the girls hard this time, and just things like that were just over and over again. We'd hear stuff that wasn't true at all. We had captains calling dispatch. Why aren't they back in service yet after a fire? They were questioning the amount of time we were taking to get back in service after a fire. They didn't do that about anybody else. So there's only one reason I have to figure they were doing it, because we were the girls.
The firehouse and the firefighters within it are an important part of any community. Can you guys tell me how you were recognized many different ways by the members of the community around Station 5?
When I looked at this question, I was like, I don't recall anybody being really shocked when they saw us. I think, our clientele around that area, we went to so many interesting medicals and things like that, but no one ever really made a comment or said anything. I think they were just, it was very kind of accepting. Like, I don't recall any of that. So nothing really stood out where, the public or the general public was surprised, or, it seemed like it was a common thing. I don't know.
I do remember some kids, particularly kids, doing double takes on when the rig would go by, or on some scenes. As a driver, my job is a little different than theirs. I gathered information on medicals, and they were more tuned into the patient. So I could see some of that stuff that maybe you didn't see. But particularly kids initially was kind of doing double takes on that. It was that they saw a woman, and then they realized there was more than one woman there. But yeah, that was mostly that kind of thing.
Yep. Thanks.
Christy's interviewing for this. You need to get behind her. I'm in this community, I'm still in the neighborhood. You need to get this policy going. And I'm like, okay.
That's awesome.
I'm also a great historian on certain things in the
Yep.
past.
Yep.
So I appreciate that, team. I want to give a few
That was Mark Lukowski, President of Local 82. Awesome. Okay, this is a real serious one. I want you guys to think about it hard. And I want the audience to listen closely because it tells the story of the whole purpose. 20 years ago, Minneapolis was a leader among the world's fire departments. 15% of the department were women. 70 out of 455 sworn employees. 20 years ago. Today, there are only half as many women on the department, around 35. And 24 of those have over 20 years on the job. So guess what? They're going to retire. Some have over 30 years. With normal attrition, mostly retirements, Minneapolis will soon fall below the 4% of career average, 4% average of career firefighters who are women in the United States. And that's from the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. 30 years ago, you were the first all-woman crew on the department. Today, there's only one. That's Station 12. And they're going to be there tomorrow, too. Can you comment on the decline or the stagnation, on the impacts of the highs and the lows, and on the impact on the department, on boys and girls, on men and women, and their outlooks? It's a big one.
Because I always have an opinion. For me, that was probably the largest disappointment of my career on this job, is that when I look back, I saw nothing had changed. Absolutely nothing. And especially towards the end, and then I stopped caring. I stopped caring what they thought of me. I stopped caring about what their opinion was. And I look at it now, and I go, this is bigger than the fire department. It has to do with the enterprise of the city of Minneapolis, that we revisit this subject over and over and over. We never do anything. There are not any concrete hiring requirements in place of that support diversity in any of the ranks of jobs for this city. It's made up. It's made up by department heads. It's made up by the city council. It's just made up along the way. This seems like a convenient number. Let's do that. Or let's not. Let's not pay attention to it. And for me, that is, I don't know how you can continue to allow the enterprise to just stumble along instead of saying, this is important. This is important that our hiring ranks in the city, regardless of the jobs, reflect our community, and that nobody is putting hard numbers out there for the city to go. If I said right now, hire a full class of women, people would think that is outrageous. But it's not if it's a whole group of men. And why is that? It's 2022. Why is that so uncomfortable for people to say? And that is such a disappointment. We have a large Native American population in the city. How many do we have on the job? Hmong population, how many? So we have all of these pockets that aren't represented. And that's just our department. But I bet if you were to put that lens on the city as a whole, we would fail. And no one thinks that's a big deal, but we'll pay out lawsuits left and right. We'll spend money there like it's, oh well. Schools are screaming for money, but we'll spend money on those kinds of things. And I look at it, if you mean it, then it should be part of, this is what we do in the city. It doesn't depend on the mayor. It doesn't depend on the department head. It doesn't depend on anything. This is how we do it in the city. And all of you will fall in line, and you're not going to make up your own numbers. This is what we're going to do and get it done. And then you need to have the horsepower of the organization that put this on to help all of these departments meet those goals. And it requires those professionals in that field to get that done. It is not made up by somebody who puts out fires. It takes people who are educated in these areas to help departments meet those goals. And that needs to be done by professionals, and I wish it was done, and I would like to see that done. So. I'm off the box now.
What Jean said.
That's right. So, just a couple more facts. 16 out of 17 classes from the first class, 1986 to June 2002, had women. For the last 20 years, only 11 out of 17 didn't have women. And until the class that graduated a month ago, only 10 women were hired. So we have 4 women in class right now. There were 4 women that graduated a month ago. We're moving in the right direction, but we have to move in bigger steps, in my opinion, as a retired firefighter. You told us how you were recruited, how you found out about it. Now, give us some suggestions to those professionals you just talked to. How are they going to recruit women? Where do you find them?
Back in the early 90s, when Bonnie and Kath and Jen Cornell started the Women's Association, and Mary was there. Maraska, I see you. I believe they went out and recruited at gyms and college sports teams and word of mouth, things like that. And Bonnie, I can't say enough about what she and that group did back then. Worked their tails off to encourage and find women out there that are capable and were capable, and it showed in the numbers that were hired. And Rocco, to his credit, let them go and let them do a lot of work. And I think that's what needs to be done again. It hasn't been done for a while, and it sounds like with Sherry and the group going again, it's starting to get going again. But I think that's kind of the route they have to go. It worked before,
Yep.
and then they have to stay after it.
Yeah, the chief yesterday, at his budget presentation, indicated that the recruitment's going to be all the time process. So that's a great step, and we'll support that. I want to take questions from the audience right now. So this thing should come off. I guess not. Questions from the audience. Awesome. Questions from the chat. Are there any? No questions from the chat? Okay. So, yeah, please. Can you?
And let me say, this woman right here was the first woman, she went on, what was the firefighter challenge? What was that? Oh, American Gladiator? Oh. No, not just did it, smashed it. And I remember the day of when they changed from women who happened to be doing this job was, they were on a roof. It was her and Stacy. And it was kind of like this, what's going on? And I said, really? Really? Is this, you would want you on your crew? And they got so mad at me that things started to happen. It got wild. And they never looked back. And I remember absolutely distinctly when we had the he had to chop a 4x4 hole in a commercial building flat roof, which is extremely difficult work if you think of all the tar, the rock, the insulation, the wood that's underneath it. So everybody was given we'd mark out these holes, and they would have to cut a 4x4 hole through without stopping. Stacy, by hand, hands down, no one even came close to her. She was like, I don't even know how to describe. Wood was just flying. And it was after they found that side of themselves, they were incredible, absolutely incredible. But that, I think, speaks to women believing you belong here. And I expect you. You know you belong here, and you just have to believe it. And that was so important in theirs. Was that I looked at them and thought, of course you can do it. Of course you can. But it was creating that push to go, you got a lot more in you than you think you do, and they absolutely did. And they continue to be such an asset to the department. And they were incredible. But it was interesting, I think that's part of the success of women in these non-traditional jobs is that you do have women there that will help them. Women learn differently than men. They tend to have to kind of think things through because we can never just jump in. And for most of us don't have a lot of experience with different pieces of equipment, chainsaws, different things that, but more and more men have absolutely no experience with it either. But, at the time when I came on, that was true. But it was really important that I always thought they could do the job. I never looked at them and thought they couldn't do the job. And that's a different perspective from a training officer than I think sometimes men can provide. So I think it's important that that training has some representation so that it's encouraging. It's not about letting anyone off the hook. It's just that you can do this. And I'm here to support your success. So.
Yes. I will. We've had women on the fire department for a good long time. However, we seem to have lost the momentum in keeping a good representation of women. What would you say today to a young girl, a woman who is considering the parts of her life, whether it be family or physical condition or the environment she's going to face in the fire department? What would you tell her to encourage her to consider and execute a career in the fire department?
I think that's for any employer now is faced with trying to recruit workers. I think a lot of people are facing that. But in the non-traditional jobs, which city government is often charged with covering, is daycare is an issue for those people that have to work evenings or unusual shifts or holidays. The city continues on those shifts where the maybe normal ways that people provide daycare for single families, people without family support. That's a consideration, and I think that's a city issue, not just a fire department issue. I think you have to recognize that we are open 24/7, 365, and do we have any kind of support system in place when daycare is not available, but you're expecting someone to show up at work? I mean, if the water department doesn't show up, that's a problem. If, your grid is down, that's a problem. If your 911 operators are not, it's a problem. So the city needs to do more to support the workers, I think, in that respect. I think that the city doesn't have clear hiring goals for departments. I don't think there's no structure in place, so there's no support. So until you decide on how the city is going to implement consistent hiring of a diverse work staff and how to support your diverse work staff across all your agencies, which would make it easier to implement, I think, than if you're just saying we're going to have it for fire or we're going to have it for police. But you have to have it for all of your, on a snow emergency, you've got people coming in that have to plow. You need it, but they don't have daycare for their kid. So what, you want them to come in and run the plow, which we need them to do, but they're, they have a sleeping child at home. So I think the city needs to really recognize that a lot of the family structure that maybe once supported people with families is no longer the way we live. And so then how do we support our workers, and how do we demand that our leaders sense that this is important, and that there's somebody who's going to keep watching? Because right now, I think if you were to ask for statistics, you'd be digging for them yourself. These are things that should be asked of department heads continually. They should have this, right, this is what we've got, this is who's coming, this is where we've been recruiting. But I don't see that emphasis put on the leadership. And let's face it, they're top paid executives. These are things that they should be expected to provide. But if there's no one there running it, and no one asking for it on a consistent basis, just like everything else, it falls off the table of being important. So I just think it needs to be codified, and therefore you can hold people accountable to that.
I think the Minneapolis Women Employee Resource Group is a great belly button, a great point to go to. As you know, the Minneapolis Firefighters Association will be joining with them, so they'll be an access point for many of those types of questions and answers for young women, not just the recruiter that shows up at the door. And every single one of us talked to a firefighter that was on the job before we came on the job. So keep doing that. Keep doing that, because even though there's going to be fewer and fewer of us all the time, there will be still some. So encourage you to do that. Any other questions? Sure. If you guys can briefly summarize what your careers in the in the next couple minutes, but if you'd like to tell the audience some important things before we do a couple more things to close. Mary, go ahead.
I would just say I want to thank these women on the table here with me and Bonnie for a heck of a good time. We had working together. The sense of family with these three, and the firefighters that I work with through the career is what really strikes me about over the 30-year career. There isn't a firefighter in here that I don't think I couldn't call up and ask for help, and if they could, they would. And I hope they feel that way about me, and I know these women would help out. And for me, the career was about family, a new big family. And I'm grateful for that.
Are we talking about now? Are we talking about what we're doing now? Or I feel like, do I have to? Dang it. It's something we did many, many years. So, yeah, I mean, same thing with Mary. I mean, it was a great career. Jean was you were an amazing captain. Putting up with some of the stuff that we did. When I say putting up, it wasn't like we were bad. But, things that happened in the station, just funny things, pranks. We really had fun. We fought a lot of fires together. We did a lot of medicals together. I just want to thank you for, keeping us safe and all your decisions. She's so smart. She's so smart. Yeah, so I retired. I'm 12 years now, 11 years retired. And right away, even before I officially retired, I was hired. It was another little kind of kept secret about, I always wanted to be a flight attendant. So that's what I do now. I've been flying for 11, 12 years for Alaska Airlines. I'm based out in San Diego. Mostly do Hawaii. I don't work that much. Do it for the fly benefits and the insurance and things like that. Married, my wife Teresa. We live in a little town called Julian, California. It's just outside of San Diego, about 4,500 feet up in the mountains. And I paint. So I'm going to plug my website right now. It's vickyhoff.com. Take a look at my paintings. So I do a lot of that. That's kind of my hobby I do on the side, kind of getting into my retirement. I'm 62, almost 63. Going to retire when I'm 65 from flying, I think. And so, yeah, life is good. Fire department was great. My new career, I feel like it's been a real healing environment for me because I work in an environment that is mostly women, and it's very, very welcoming. So when I come to work, everybody's excited to see me, and it's a good feeling. So I think what I endured with the fire department all those years, not really realizing it until really a couple of years ago, looking back, and going, boy, that was really rough. That was a really rough environment. Going to work every day, knowing that you're really not wanted, you're really not valued. You're tolerated. When I got into fire investigation, it was a little bit different because I was removed from the suppression. I was still in the fire station, but I was kind of my own. So this environment is just totally different. It's just, like I say, it's been really healing for me. But I wouldn't take back anything with the fire department. It was a wonderful career. And it's not for everyone when you're talking about what would you say to people. It's just like 9 to 5 wasn't right for me. I knew that. So this job, is not 9 to 5. It's a very different job. It requires, a different set of skills. So that's what I would tell women or anybody is just, it's not for everyone. So.
It sounds like, too, you had comments about this series of events.
Pardon me?
You had comments about this series of events, impressions about these events?
No.
Okay, thanks. It's a summary.
Summarize yourself, G.
I love the fire department. I love it. I hate it. So I got to find out a lot about myself. The thing that I enjoy is a group of people that I think have the same type of values that I have: honor, public service, trustworthiness, hardworking, dependable. If you're not that, if those are not values that you hold dearly, then don't be in public service. Don't make the job fit you. If those are not things you hold dear, public service is just not where you should be, because it's really important. People are very vulnerable that we serve, and you have to, are you a person that you would want to have, if you were out there in the audience and you're looking, do you want me to come in and take care of your parents? Do you want us in there? And you should be able to say absolutely, regardless of what's going on. And that's the group of people that I enjoyed working with. And it just didn't matter. And so that's my greatest thing, was being a part of that team environment. I was like, wow, this is really neat. Because I'm not from the military, like you say, where you do that. So I love that about the job. And it can also be kind of like a family where you hate it too, But I would do it again. There are parts of it I hated, absolutely hated, and were just grueling. But it is what it is. And I'm very thankful to be a public servant. To do it with, to enjoy serving the public is a different kind of a job, and it's not for everybody. You have to want to be a public servant, and I think we don't get those jobs, those grinding jobs that everybody does on behalf of the rest of the population. I take my hat off to them. I thank them every day. I turn my faucet on. My lights go on. My street gets plowed. I thank them every day. It's like, thank you, someone showed up for work today. I appreciate you. So they make the world go, and I don't see our public employees getting the kind of recognition they should for just being unglamorous, 9 to 5, 24-hour a day, whatever it is job. And I love them. I just think they're awesome. So there you go.
Before we conclude, I want to ask Mary Maresca to come up. Mary Maresca is the most senior woman on the Minneapolis Fire Department by time. She started in September of 1991. She's number 9 on the overall seniority list right now. She was my captain for a long time at Station 5, and I really appreciated the leadership and opportunity she gave to me. So she's not going to be able to join us tomorrow at Station 5, so today is a little taste of what you're going to hear tomorrow from other leaders and senior members of the fire department. So Mary Maresca.
Well, I just want to thank Christy for giving me this opportunity to just say a few things. I know I can storytell, and we can be here all day trading stories, and good and bad. But what I want to take away from right now is hearing what we did then to be successful and what it'll take to continue the success. And empowering or encouraging the city leaders that are here, reach out to the people who did all the work. No offense to administrations past and present, but the numbers of women who were hired within the fire department are because of us, because we wanted to see the change. We became the change. To be the first Native American woman, okay, that's a responsibility I bear. I'm trying, I'm doing my part. I want to know what they're doing. The same for the first women here. I owe them my effort, my energy. That's why I went to 5s. And I haven't left 5s. We don't have enough time to talk about why I haven't left 5s. But I wanted to see how women did it. I was taught how men did it when I first came on. But I wanted to see how they did it, what I can do differently. I learned empathy. I learned compassion. I learned how to smile in the face or you want to scratch people's eyes out. It really sucks some days. And I wanted to know how you did it with grace. And unless we keep these conversations going, we're going to be back to 4 or 5 women on the fire department. How is that possible? If you want to know what we can do different, talk to the women who did it. And let us guide you that way. I personally want to just say thank you. That door was open when I came in as a young 21-year-old from New York. I just got out of the Marine Corps. I had I'm the youngest of 8. I felt like I was invincible. So my experience wasn't like theirs. It wasn't always fun, but people didn't give me a hard time. I was already prepared for that. But I wanted to know what they knew. I wanted to know what I can do to be better, how to promote, how to have those answers when women came on the job. So, Jean, thank you for letting me know that I wasn't the only one without a filter. That really helped a career. And Vicki always had a smile, a disarming smile in the face of being sad, angry, working with people maybe you weren't always happy to work with. Mary Moen taught me how to scare people. I have never scared people so well until we started working together. I've worked with Mary Moen most of my career. She's always been positive, great debater, always willing to help, and that I try to continue today. So thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. To Bonnie, who's not here, I learned quickly that you couldn't outwork her. I thought for sure I was going to outwork her because I was young, I had an attitude, and I realized quickly that there was more to strength than just the physical component. So I'm sorry I won't be there tomorrow, and I hope you take it all in. It's well-deserved and absolutely earned. So thank you.
So in conclusion, I want to thank you all for your honest and in-depth discussion this afternoon. And I know we could have gone for 3 more hours, and that would have been good. And I also want to thank you for your decades of leadership to the city of Minneapolis and to the Minneapolis Fire Department. And I know you'll continue to be leaders in your communities and on your jobs now. To the rest of you, thanks for attending today. I hope you got some insight, and it's got to be a link somewhere, so you'll be able to call that up for your history classes, which should start happening tomorrow, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now. We look forward tomorrow to an event at 10 o'clock at Station 5, which is 2700 Bloomington Avenue South. Since the event starts at 10, I encourage you to start getting there around 9 o'clock because the parking is only on street. When you show up, put your valuables in your trunk just like you do every place else in Minneapolis, and we look forward to having you there where really important people, besides these four, will be there to give some of their input about the importance of the first all-woman crew in Minneapolis Fire Department history, and probably national and international history, that happened 30 years ago. So thank you very much to all.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yep. Hey, you guys.